Okay, so I'm going to talk about crypto projects, okay? And I think it's super interesting. I think I say this every time we do a crypto project, but I think this is a pretty undervalued opportunity, I think. So let's just talk about it. So I want to give a little bit of background on technology, specifically internet and web technology. So what's coming?
Just a big... I thought that
It's a
that
very
was
strange-looking truck.
Yeah. It is a very strange-looking truck.
True.
Anyway.
Okay. So I'll give you a really quick overview of like major technological revolutions within the last 80 years within
80?
within the internet and web space, okay? So it started off with, we'll just go super quick because we can't labour on this.
Yeah.
So it starts off with like the mainframe, then personal computers. So now you've got your own computer, you've got your own little mainframe. And then graphical interfaces now means that the common person can now start controlling the computer. And then comes the internet, which is just the physical wiring and the governing network connectivity protocols between different people's computers, I suppose, personal computers and stuff. And initially this was just academic and military use. And then it became adopted throughout most of society. And that's where Web 1.0, or back then it was just called the web, back in like the early 90s came about. And this is then now where it was more like a document and application platform. And you can kind of think of it as like sort of read-only and sort of like static. You can sort of browse websites, read stuff, look at stuff, but nothing was super interactive. And then we're defining Web 2.0 as when it becomes dynamic and read and write, I guess, natured. And so it created new economies on the internet, and it created rich dynamic applications that you could sort of use and interact with. But it also had a dark side where it sort of started to require long engagement from its users, and that was the advertising business model of most of the internet. It still is. And
because
so
most of the internet is it's like still a Web 2.0
Yeah,
system,
totally.
you know. It's yeah,
exactly. And so a large percentage of it. And so like examples of that is like Facebook and Spotify and Airbnb. All of these have two-way interaction. You're dealing with another person. There's the business in between, which is the intermediary. You know, there's things where they like often the chicks like to just like sit down and like eat on the little
the
tables.
chicks like to sit down.
I don't know. Like that's what happens.
Like a little grazing table thing. Yeah. No, I know exactly what you mean. I find it really funny when you try and describe women. You know, the chicks like to sit down and like like a baby shower.
Yeah. Okay, so
yes, two-way interactions and
two-way interactions is dynamic, it's rich applications, and the issue is the marketing. The business model is advertising and having people stay on their websites for as long as possible, engaging with it.
Yeah.
And then the way they kind of get people to come back or engage is creating content that not necessarily like makes you happy, but often maybe makes you a little bit enraged, right? And so that's where you see like all of these debates on social media and stuff like that, and now people are getting cancelled and whatever.
Yeah.
So that's Web 2.0. So then after that comes the mobile, so you've got it all on your device. Then blockchain technology, and then finally, which sort of integrates, is Web 3.0. I don't know if you've heard much about it.
No, I'm excited, yeah.
Okay.
No, pretend I hadn't. I don't know anything about Web 3.0.
Okay, perfect, let's pretend. And so this is read, write, and trust. And so it's verifiability of the people that you're interacting with. So now I don't need a secondary or a third-party intermediary to trust. I can now start trusting other individuals through sort of blockchain ledger style technology, where I can see, I can verify that, I don't know, you have made this transaction, or you have done this thing, or you've interacted with this other person who I know, or whatever. And so,
and that's essentially commonly referred to as like smart contracts.
Totally. So this is stuff like examples of this is like, say, MetaMask, for example. MetaMask is just a decentralized wallet to a certain extent. I think maybe it has other functions too. But in this example, we can now transfer, say, cryptocurrency between our wallets, and there's no actual intermediary between. Like, you've got your defining code that defines like your ID. I have mine, and we can transfer and interact together. And so I guess it's saying like this is the future of web, and so other projects is like Polkadot apparently is leading the way. Obviously Ethereum and Bitcoin, as Bitcoin did to money, Web 3.0 will do to the internet. So I wanted to just...
That's a good little catchphrase. I like that.
I wanted to just like give a really quick overview of how that's progressed, to just try and provide some background that makes a bit more sense as to what this particular crypto project is trying to do in their space. So let's jump into it. So Polymath is at this point it's hard to describe what it is. It's the company crypto project. It's also the token that I'm going to talk about. So Polymath is the name of the company. Their token, which is on the Ethereum network, is Poly, P-O-L-Y, which shouldn't be confused with Polygon, which has the ticker Matic.
Okay.
And that's unrelated.
Okay, I think I've heard of the Polygon and
yeah,
Matic.
It's a much higher ranked crypto.
Right, but we're talking about Polygraph.
Polymath.
Polymath, sorry.
If it wasn't confusing enough.
Just cut out that bit where I said polygraph.
Okay, so Polymath, Poly is the ticker and it's the token, and as I said, it's on the Ethereum ecosystem. So, two founders in this particular project. The first one's named Chris Huser, and he's got a Bachelor of Arts, majoring in history. A little bit unusual. He then went on to do JD Law program over in the US.
You love the Juris Doctors.
Yeah, it's kind of cool. And then this is a very
That's
strange...
what Betsy Cohen did, didn't she?
no,
I don't think
it
was
so.
someone else. It was someone.
Yeah. And so then he went on, after he finished his law degree, he went on to be a Canadian soldier for 12 years.
Wow.
This guy named Chris, right?
Okay.
And then he was an associate lawyer practicing commercial litigation and securities law for about 4 years. And then in 2017, he founded Polymath. So that's a bit strange. He has a very interesting background. I think what to take away from that is he does have securities law background, and so he understands the process, which we'll dive into in a second. He understands the process of managing, and particularly the legal side of like financial securities and financial instruments and financial assets, and how the legislation works for that. So that's kind of cool. And so second founder, his name's Trevor Kaverko, and he had a business degree. That's what he did, and he was a fifth round draft pick for the New York Rangers hockey team.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
See, remember when we were talking about Solana?
Yeah.
And you were concerned that the founder surfed. Look at now you're bringing me this random soldier dude and
the pro hockey player.
Pro hockey player.
Yeah, it's not looking good.
You want programmers.
And so obviously anyone can do it. So then after his hockey career, which I think all of these pro sports, particularly in the US, don't last that long. You get to being 25, 26 and yeah, too old. And so then he went on to be the CEO at a digital education company for a few years. And then he was CEO at a digital asset management company. He was a co-founder of a real estate capital management company. And he invested in like a royalty management company, building technologies company, and a couple of crypto companies and projects. So I guess a bit of background in the industry there. Now... On February 8th, so he founded Polymath in 2017 with Chris. But I'll just jump forward for a sec. February 8th, 2021, he resigned from his role as CEO. He was acting as CEO at Polymath. And then it came out about a month later, at March 14th, 21, he was actually arrested on charges of sexual assault of a minor.
Oh.
And he deleted Twitter, and both the Polymath website and his LinkedIn have no mention of their relationship.
Wow.
So unless you dive into it, you can't actually tell that he was the founder. If you go onto the Polymath website, it just says Chris is the co-founder, but it doesn't show who the other founder is.
Right.
For obvious reasons.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's some of the dirty laundry. It is what it is. People are crazy. People do silly things.
Yeah.
So they've got 44 employees to give a bit of gauge of scale. And so I'll talk a little bit about the currency itself. So the current price is about 95 cents. This is all in AUD. And the market cap is $600 million, which ranks it at 144.
Yep.
And a new metric that we haven't talked about before is market dominance,
Ooh.
which is just really simply the market cap of that particular project divided by the total market cap of the crypto market. And so it's got 0.02%, very small. To give a bit more of gauge of scale, Nano is almost $1 billion market cap, sits at 117 rank and 0.03%, similar market dominance.
Yep.
And then what do we talk about? Solana is getting close to 80 billion market cap, which puts it at number 6. I think it was a little bit higher before, wasn't it?
It was number 7 when we talked about it.
Okay, there you go. It's up a little bit.
It's moving up. Yeah.
2.3% market dominance, and then just full gauge of scale. Bitcoin, $1.5 trillion market cap.
Yeah.
It's had a good run recently, obviously number 1, and it's 46%.
46%.
Market dominance.
Yeah.
So almost 50% of the market is Bitcoin, which is interesting.
There's one thing that's interesting about Bitcoin is there's almost no, like, you can make whatever blockchain you want. You can make something better. You can make something 1,000,000 times better.
Yeah.
It pretty much just seems like people are going to say, oh yeah, Bitcoin.
Yeah,
Bitcoin.
yeah.
So yeah. I don't know. I genuinely don't know why it's the dominant one.
Yep.
But
well, it was the first, right?
Yeah, it's the first, but but it's got no qualities which would make it.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. It seems a bit irrational, right?
Definitely, yeah.
But people are irrational.
Yeah.
People keep talking about it, so people keep thinking that it's stable, I guess, or that it's the best or something.
Yeah, and I would say it's probably the word Bitcoin is more popular than the word cryptocurrency. Yeah. So when people say, oh, what type of Bitcoin have you got? You know, that's like a very,
Correct. There's a lot of misinformation. Not misinformation, but misunderstanding, I would say.
Yeah.
People who, like, I've probably been asked 2 or 3 times when people sort of say, like, is Bitcoin or is crypto like a stock?
Yeah,
and don't really understand the difference between that sort of stuff as well.
Yeah.
And so, you can't expect people to be making rational decisions when they're asking stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Which, if you're asking that question, that's totally fine. And I'm more than happy to answer it. And so, circulating supply is 625 million poly, with their max supply being 1 billion, so it's a bit over half of their total supply at the moment. That's still a bit locked up. And all-time high is $2.22. And it's down 60% from that now at almost $1. And all-time low was 0.01 cent, which was in March 2020. Keeping in mind that this went live at the end of 2017. And so, interesting thing is, if you would have bought it in March 2020, you'd make 6,500%. But if you had have bought it when the crypto first ICO'd, then you will have made minus 10%.
Oh, right.
So that's interesting.
Yeah. So they had a initial crypto offering of,
I guess it was like $1 or so.
Yeah,
and
but
currently it's like 95 cents.
With a market cap of 650 million or something
well,
like that.
I don't know how many were in circulation.
Right, okay.
Yeah,
right.
Probably a lot less. I don't know what their starting circulation was.
Right, okay.
To calculate that.
Okay.
Yeah. So let's talk about the solution, the problem that they're trying to solve. So financial securities, I think I mentioned it earlier, is basically, it's a financial instrument that holds some sort of monetary value. What's going on there?
There's a little spider on my
true.
on my mic.
Got to be careful, eh?
Yeah. We're outside again.
True. Out in the elements,
Wildlife.
under a big tree. You got to be careful. Sometimes the big spiders drop out of this. And so it's tell me if I'm right here. So financial security could be described as a financial instrument that holds some monetary value. It usually represents some sort of stake or ownership in a corporation. So that could be, a financial security could be a share in a company, which you have a small claim on the company, small ownership on the company. It could even be a bond. So it could be like an agreement that you're going to pay back some money that I've loaned you. And again, the bondholder has potentially has some sort of claim on the asset if you don't pay it, potentially.
So you were describing a security, not to flex, but as someone who's worked in securitization, which is the long word for security.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously. So security can really easily be defined as by liquidity. So if you securitize something, you're making it tradable, there's a market for it, and there's liquidity, which just means that you can buy and sell it as much as you want. That's a security. So,
okay, so it makes some sort of asset liquid.
Yes, and so in order to trade something, you can like with this table, right?
Yep.
If you had a massive amount of tables, and then you made a tables market on on an exchange, and you said this bond has 5,000 tables in it, and it's going to trade for $100, then that's a securitized pool of assets of tables. So
no, it's good. Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
And so your bond, your piece of paper, just represents 5,000 tables that you've got claim over or
exactly.
ownership or something.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So we're saying it represents a part ownership or something of an asset. It makes it liquid. It makes it tradable.
It also means that you can get a loan against the asset. So so something securitizable is something you can get a loan against. So a mortgage is a securitized asset.
Yeah.
But a mortgage isn't a house. A mortgage is a piece of paper with a claim over the house.
And it's an asset for the it's not the asset for the person who has the loan though, right?
It's an asset for the bank. It's an asset for the person that buys the loan in the end.
Yeah.
And for the bank, But the whole thing with that is, so if you just have a house or whatever, it's not a security because it's not easily tradable on a marketplace.
Yeah.
So
that's good. So, I think we've talked about it a bit. And so basically, this particular company is trying to disrupt this industry with their blockchain technology. So, let's talk about the timeline. And as we do, I'll get into some of the details. So, in January 2018, it launched its first smart contract on Ethereum, as I mentioned. And so, it calls its token ST20. So, we talked about ERC20 tokens.
Yep.
So this is called ST20 token, and it's just a standardization for their security tokens. And so in this test, it was on the Ethereum testnet, so they can create like a substitute small network that replicates the Ethereum network, and they can test things without having monetary value. And so you'll hear sometimes, if you're reading white papers and stuff like that, when they're testing particular projects, they'll do it on the Cardano testnet or the Ethereum testnet, and then it'll change when it goes live to the Ethereum mainnet, which is the functioning full network. And so one of the products they offer is a thing called Token Studio DApp. And so what that allows, or what that facilitates is it facilitates the ability to be able to create a token that represents some sort of asset. So it allows you to create a security token, and it allows anyone to do it. So instead of saying, come and speak to us and we'll create a set of tokens for you to represent some asset, we're creating a platform and you can do it. It's self-service.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
And so
it's developable.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And so the ST20 token, as I said, it's essentially an ERC20 token, which, do you remember what that stands for?
ERC20?
Yeah, we talked about this.
Ethereum reputable coin.
No, request for comment, remember? Ethereum request for comment?
Okay, all right.
And so it's basically that standardization, which is the main standard on the Ethereum network for their smart contract tokens. But it has a small change, which is there was a bunch of mandatory guidelines that defines basically the template for these ERC20 tokens. And it was total supply, balance of, transfer from, approve, and allowance. And basically those attributes make up the functionality of the tokens. This one removes two. It removes transfer and transfer from, and just replaces it with verify transfer, which makes it more flexible. So they can do things like they can whitelist between particular senders and receivers inherent in the token. They can see transfers over a certain amount are prohibited, or under a certain amount. Partial token transfers could be prohibited, and certain addresses could be blacklisted. So it just creates some additional functionality that works for what they're trying to do, which is create financial securities.
Yep.
So then later, so in July 2018, the Security Token Roundtable in Barbados formed. So the idea here was it was to set out to address the lack of standardization. And so it was a group of industry professionals. This is very external to Polymath at the moment.
Yeah.
And they got together. It was developers, lawyers, transfer agents, exchanges, just industry thought leaders. And they were basically trying to come up with what could the standardized security token look like. What do we need to have inherent within the template that makes it legally binding and functional for the purpose that we're trying to sort of use it for.
Yeah.
So in August 2018, they went live on the Ethereum mainnet with their ST20 token. And then in September 2018, the initial draft for ERC 1400, which was the template token that they came up with in the roundtable, that was the initial draft. So basically, there was a lack of consistency that was significantly increasing friction for both customers and like custodians and exchanges. And so the group that formed the roundtable was trying to get rid of this, and so they set a bunch of standards around compliance, how to document handling and notification, token controls, sort of set certain permissions for forced transfers and stuff like that, and also partial fungibility, which it says here that it improves transparency for investors of their ownership rights. So it makes your ownership rights slightly different to the ownership right of someone else. So it's slightly unique, but still a fungible product.
Yep. And we all know what fungible means from NFTs.
Yeah, so fungible just means there's no difference between the thing that you own and the thing that I own. Like they're interchangeable. It's like a commodity, right?
Yeah.
And so partial fungibility means they're kind of the same, but there's like one slight difference that makes it unique.
Yeah.
And so they wanted to apply jurisdictional laws from across the globe, and so that it would be able to support things like public equity, bonds, which we've mentioned, and then other things like real estate, property investing, and even artwork. And so in May 2019, so 6 months later or so, 8 months, the announcement for Polymesh Blockchain was initiated.
Yep.
So up until this point, they've created their own security-specific token, which was ST20.
Yep.
Which was very similar to ERC20, which is the standardization on the Ethereum chain. And then they realized that there was still too many different types of security tokens. There's other projects trying to do it as well.
Yeah.
And so they came together, they created ERC 1400. And then, so that was now bringing some standardization to the industry. Wow, can you hear that?
Yeah. Is that an SQ7?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dang, it's brand new. Audi SQ7.
Burbling.
Yeah, it sounds so good. It's just like idling. And so now, up until this point, they've been using the Ethereum blockchain, right?
Yep.
And so now, Polymesh is their own blockchain ecosystem.
Right. And so Polymesh? Polymesh.
Sorry,
okay.
It does get, yes, that's a bit confusing.
Okay, yeah.
So Polymath is the company. Polymesh is their blockchain.
Yes.
That they've just started in May 2019. And Poly is the token. It's what the ticker is called.
POLY.
Yep. And so they now have a standardized token, which is ERC 1400. And so Polymesh was a collaboration with Polymath and a guy named Charles Hoskinson, who we have spoken about before.
Here we go.
And he's one of the founders of Ethereum. And he started IOHK, which is Input Output Hong Kong, which is that website with the riddles, like the squiggly stuff.
Yeah.
And
great
so,
website.
Yeah. And so they're the main project leaders of Cardano, is him and his corporation, which is IOHK, which we've talked about. And so they said that the Ethereum chain, so they're now trying to figure out, okay, maybe we need to put this on our own chain. Excuse me. And so the Ethereum chain was missing some crucial, more like regulatory elements, because obviously this space is super regulated, right? It's probably what makes it somewhat hard for like a smaller investor to get into, is all the regulation around ownership of certain securities. And so, which obviously is probably required, but, and so there was 4 things that the Ethereum blockchain didn't give that they needed, which was confidentiality. It didn't, which was protecting information while still accurately reporting and auditing the process. Another attribute was identity. So, on the Polymesh blockchain, no individual can transact without valid identity. And so that's where KYC comes in, which is Know Your Customer.
Know Your Customer, yeah.
And so they have specific service providers for that you have to validate your identity through. And this mitigates a thing that we haven't talked about before, which is called Sybil resistance, which is SYBIL.
Okay.
And all this means is someone or a group gaining disproportionate influence, disproportionately large influence, due to like a whole bunch of fake identities.
Yeah, right.
Because you're not defining it as just one person; it can be anyone.
Yeah.
And so they get rid of that problem. They needed some specific governance, so that the operation and governance structure of the blockchain could be curated to protect the assets. And they needed a whole bunch of compliance attributes as well, which allowed smart extensions to be added that enforce jurisdictional rules that relate to certain holders' locations, physical locations and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So the chain is POS. Do you remember what that stands for?
POS?
Proof of
stake.
Yes. So that's called the consensus mechanism. And so it's very similar to what we've talked about in previous projects, so nothing new here. And so authorized validators, they stake it. A validator could be... Oh.
I was trying really hard not to say point of sale.
Yeah, true. That's probably the more common one, I suppose.
Yeah. POS, proof of stake.
Proof of stake is the consensus mechanism, as you said. And the token on the new blockchain is called POLYX.
POLYX. Okay.
So now we're faced with a situation where, and this is very recent, we have Poly on the Ethereum blockchain and POLYX on the Polymesh blockchain.
Okay.
And so, as I said, authorized validators, which the key here is authorized validators. Not anyone can be a validator. Again, because of certain compliance reasons. They only allow certain organizations to be validators, and so that could be certain exchanges, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And then nominators, which was someone like you or I, we've talked about this before, you could nominate a particular validator. So I could nominate, let's say, for example, I don't think Binance is, but I could nominate Binance as my validator, and I would stake in Binance my POLYX, and then I could generate some returns from that.
Yeah.
Okay, and so the validators, which is the exchange, they keep a fixed percent of any rewards that they generate. And whilst the residual amount after that fixed percent is prorated, which means it's based on what you hold, or based on what you contribute, probably more in this situation, to all the different nominators. Based on the percentage, or based on the amount that you put into the pool and what percentage that is of the total sum.
Yeah.
Yep. And so POLYX, as I said, is the native token. So they're faced with the problem here. All of their diehard fans and everybody else owns Poly on the Ethereum network. And then they're about to start a new chain with a whole new currency. And so the problem with that is that anyone who holds the old one would be very worried that would just totally depreciate in value, right?
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Because all their new technology is going into this new project.
Yeah, for
right?
sure. Yep.
So for that reason, for the next year at least, they've said, Poly can be swapped one for one for POLYX.
Ah, yeah, okay.
So that mitigates
That's
that
how they get that, yeah.
And so they use what's called a bridging function, because I think it does get a little bit complicated. I don't know the technicalities, but you're changing from, you're trying to get two chains that don't talk to each other to say, yes, this person's, because you've got to, okay, so when you've got Poly, you send it to a burn wallet.
Yep.
So that that's now out of circulation.
Yeah. And
then that chain, being the Ethereum chain, has to speak to the Polymesh chain and say, oh, he's actually burnt it, he or she, is now able to have 10. If you burn 10, you could now have 10 POLYX tokens. And so there's a little intermediary step that that Polymath have put in place.
So you would call that interoperability, Nathan?
Yeah, well, it's a lack of interoperability that means they need to have a bridging function that does that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
We can't talk about crypto without talking about interoperability.
It's like we can't talk about anything without talking about Chamath.
Yeah, exactly.
And so they have a network treasury. I used to like treasuries, not so much anymore.
No, we don't like treasuries anymore.
And so, as I said, so Poly has a total maximum supply of 1 billion tokens, with I think 650 million in circulation at the moment. And so they're assumed that most of those will bridge over to POLYX one for one. And POLYX is not a fixed supply, and there's no maximum limit to that they've set at the moment. So the fees, we'll just talk about the fees really quick. So the fees are paid by the originator of the transaction. And so there's gas fees, which is just the industry term for transaction fees. And so that's a product of the transaction size and complexity, which is a bit ambiguous. Sorry, I couldn't give you a particular figure, but that's what they say. It's like a product, so it's related to the size of the transaction and the complexity, which gets super ambiguous then. I don't know what percentage it is.
Sure. Yeah.
And so if a particular validator validates it, the split is 4-1 to the treasury getting 4 and the validator getting 1. There's protocol fees, which are native functions. So, like, you could reserve a token. You could reserve a token ticker, and in doing that, you'd pay a small fee. And then there's developer fees for people who are developing on top of this platform, who can charge fees, but that's up to them. The smart extensions, which allow for specific rules related to the jurisdiction that you live in. If you're an Australian buying X security, we can create all these additional rules that are required in your area. Particular record keeping, capital distribution, whatever it is. And then oracles. I think we've talked about oracles before, right?
I'm not sure.
You're not sure? Okay, so oracles are just bridges between the blockchain and the real world.
Yeah.
And so it's real market data. So it does have that ability to integrate major market data providers who can fetch real information on request on the chain. Now, can you smell something?
Someone's got a good fire going.
And then the last thing is it allows stable coins to be used, which are just a token that's pegged or pinned to some sort of fiat currency if someone wants to use that for a particular smart contract.
Well, we don't always love stable coins.
No, not when it's Tether.
Not on this show.
So that's Polymesh. I apologise that was a little bit in depth, but hopefully someone found it interesting. If not,
that's good.
Watch it at 2 times and come back to us.
And if you didn't like that, watch it at half times. Watch it at 0.5 speed.
And then we'll get multiple watches, views.
And then like and comment and subscribe.
Yes, on Apple Podcasts.
Yes.
And so 2020, the Polymesh white paper came out, which is what I read, which I got a lot of this information from. Side note, if you're ever interested in looking at crypto projects, the white paper is a great place to start. From what I've looked at, they're not inherently super technical.
Yep.
They try and say things in a readable, digestible manner. And so I would suggest having a look at that. If you're looking into a new crypto, it's a good place to start. 2020, again, Polymesh testnet. Remember, that's just being sort of a fake small network. Version 1 launched. And so they were testing the bridge between Poly and POLYX.
Yes.
They were testing the wallet function and the token studio, which is where people can go in and create the actual security tokens. And in 2020, I think it was maybe Q3, testnet version 2, where they checked a few other functionalities, like I think it was like unique identity settlements and some additional Polymesh token studio features. And then here we go. We're getting current now.
Oh, here we go.
Almost done.
No, it's good. I saw a WRX.
Yeah, that's sick WRX.
In electric blue.
That's clean.
Yeah.
Nice fitment of the wheels.
Yeah.
We should have a second camera when we sit in places like this.
Yeah, and get all the cars going past. Yeah,
there's some background for people. So two more key points. In October 2020, there was a new CEO appointed to Polymath, and his name is Vincent Kadar. He's got a Bachelor of Science, majoring in computer science, and he's 20 years as a CEO and president at a company called Telepin Software Systems, which during his time pivoted the organization into digital wallets and payments. So he's got a lot of experience in that sort of area. So that's kind of cool. And then in Q4 2021, Polymesh mainnet is set to launch. Now, it was scheduled to launch in 13th of October.
Yeah.
But if you look at the date today, that is in the past.
Oh yeah, true.
So
that is in the past of when today is.
Correct. It's still nice and ambiguous. It was delayed for 2 reasons, from what I can see. Likely due to the change in CEO, which happened in the last. It happened on the 23rd of October. If you have a look at the date today, very recent.
Yes, very recent. Some would say that was yesterday.
That was the announcement, and also the formation of Polymesh Association was delayed a little bit. And so Polymesh Association is the non-profit that is the custodian and the developer for the particular ecosystem for the blockchain. So Polymath is the parent company, is my assumption. And, they created Poly, they created POLYX, whatever. And then the subsidiary from that being Polymesh Association is a non-profit, and they're pure. And that needs to be non-profit because there needs to be a trust. If you're just a profitable company and you're creating an ecosystem, people aren't going to trust the ecosystem because the whole thing's there just to make money.
Exactly, yeah.
Right? So it has to be non-profit. And you'll find most of them are. And so this is the developer for the actual chain, and they're based in Switzerland, which is really random.
Yeah.
And so 2 use case examples very quickly. I'm sorry, this is taking so long.
No. It's it's what we do.
So 2 use case examples, and this is where. So when I first heard about this coin, it was from someone who'd said, "Oh, you should look at Poly. I'm pretty sure they're like something to do with real estate." And I was like, "Oh, okay." Right. And then I looked into it. I'm like,
there's nothing to do with real estate.
But there is. So this is what they would have read. They would have read this article, which was quite recently a company called Red Swan, which is a prop tech company. Do you know what that means?
I don't, but I want to circle back to that.
Right.
You should look into this. Is this in your work crypto group chat that someone said it's into?
It's not in a work group crypto group chat, but it was the person who tried to initiate the work crypto group.
Okay. Right. Did they not get let into the group?
Well, the group never really formed unless I wasn't made a part of it.
Maybe you're the one that got left out.
Maybe I got left out. But no, he gave me like these tips. He's like, you got to look into like Poly, whatever. And I was like, okay, I looked into it. And so this is why he thought it was real estate.
Let's come back around the...
Oh, jeez. You would too if you were driving that.
For sure.
You're looking for a park, I guess. No, there's a park right there.
Yeah, there's heaps, yeah.
Just sick. Surely they can hear that. I'll crank that right up.
Taking the beast out for a spin.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so Red Swan, is it a prop tech company? What do you reckon that stands for?
Prop tech. No.
Property technology company?
Property technology. Okay. Of course.
And so the company is creating the... Wow, there it is. Sorry, small spider. The company's creating the largest online marketplace for digital asset-backed securities from quality real estate projects.
Cool. All right.
Okay. And so they're based in Houston, Texas, founded by a guy named Ed. Who cares about him? The liquidity... So that what they want to do is provide liquidity to So what they wanted to provide was liquidity for CRE holders. Do you know what CRE stands for?
Correct.
That's kind of how it sounds.
Real estate. Certified
commercial real estate.
Commercial real estate. Okay.
Yeah. Liquidity for commercial real estate is what they wanted to provide. And remember, you said security. What are they? Financial securities or whatever. One of the definitions you said is that it provides liquidity, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's what they wanted to do for CRE, commercial real estate, and so. So the deal that they did was potentially the largest tokenization from a single entity to date, which was $2.2 billion worth of assets were tokenized. It took them 1 hour to complete it across 12 properties, and the typical investor allocation, so I guess purchase of these tokens, was between 10,000 and 10 million. So it's very broad, but that's kind of cool because it shows that you can now have a broad range of investment amounts because you can buy these small tokens that all equal small shares in some commercial property or something.
Okay, that's cool because so we used to buy CMBS, which are commercial mortgage-backed securities.
Yep.
And basically, buying CMBS, you need to be like a institutional player.
Yep. Yep.
And you need to put in a $50 million bid, or and if you put in a $5 million bid, that's still fine, but you're kind of on the lower end of the spectrum, and so it'd be expected that you put in a $50 million bid, you get scaled, all that kind of thing, and there's a full process. There's a securitization house that's running all those things, and one of the great parts about Web3 and all that kind of thing is obviously. The smart contracts eliminate the need for the lawyers and the thing.
Correct. Because they did a one-time round table where they decided, actually, what do we need to do? And let's automate the whole process.
Exactly, yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Which is great, right? This is interesting, right?
Yeah, so you can cut out... It's Web3 is amazing because you can cut out bankers, lawyers, accountants.
Who needs them?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's definitely the future because...
Great. Okay, cool. And so the other example, this one is funny, and I've got a few photos and I'm going to show you. 2 photos. I've put them in our little shared file thing.
Okay, great.
Jerry.
Yeah. Check that out later, editor.
Okay, so Market Lend. Have you ever heard of Market Lend?
Market Lend, no.
Turns out to be a Sydney-based company. This is their other case study. They've got a couple of case studies on the website. This is where I got these from. And so Market Lend is a marketplace lending for SMEs. You know what that stands for?
Small to medium enterprises.
Nailed it. And so what they want to do is raise capital. And so they do that through accessing capital markets, which is like sort of long-term debt markets for investors on their platform. So I think they maybe help smaller and medium-sized companies sort of broker debt deals with people who want to buy their long-term debt.
Yes, that'd be debt markets, not capital markets.
What?
Oh, it's all good. You said capital markets.
No, clarify.
Okay, so capital markets and debt markets are 2 separate things.
Oh, really?
But yes.
What's the difference?
Well, capital markets are buying equities and shares and buying the equity part of the balance sheet, and debt markets are buying the debt part of the balance sheet.
Oh, interesting.
And so,
gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay,
anyway,
so it's more specific than that.
Yep.
I just assumed capital markets with just any long-term assets.
Yeah. No, you got assets
separate.
you got assets on one side of the balance sheet, obviously,
and then
obviously there's 2 markets which make
what
up
do you call
the
short-term
back end.
debt market?
That's the short-term debt market.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So money market.
Money market.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
So
I feel like maybe I was told wrong in a lecture.
Oh, okay. All good.
Keep going. Okay. So Polymath do a white label service. So if anyone's ever tried to make a product or something, all that means is a manufacturer manufactures their own products with their stickers on them, or you can approach them to manufacture a large quantity, and they'll do the same manufacturing process, and they'll do it without any of their stickers on them, and you can put your own branding on it and call it your own product, right?
Yeah.
And so that would be, you go to Aldi and you buy flake corns, and it's actually cornflakes, but the same company's just rebranded it, and Aldi sell it. Not sure if that's what they do, but it's a good example. And so that's what they did in this situation. So Market Lend wanted to start using this tokenization of their securities, but they didn't want to do it themselves. They didn't want to go through the process, so they just basically made an agreement where they signed. They called it signed a white label agreement, and so they deposited a certain amount of Poly, which is kind of interesting, into their white label account, and then Polymath did the work for them.
Yep.
And so it took them 4 weeks to implement the technology into what they do, and they've done 890 loans that have been issued using this technology, which is about $376 million USD worth. And so here's something interesting. So Market Lend, which I was just talking about, they created some tokens for Tyndall Capital.
Which is Tinder.
No. Tyndall Capital, which is Market Lend's parent company.
Okay.
Okay? And so they created, it says on the website, they created 3 corporate loans for from the Market Lend platform. And so Tyndall Capital, I looked it up, right? This is really interesting. So I just typed it in. You can do it yourself. Tyndall, Tyndall, Capital, Pty, Ltd, right? And if you have a look, here's my screenshot of Google, right?
Yep.
Now, when you type it in, their website comes up, which is there, tyndallcapital.com. And if we look over if you look over at their location, we might blur it out possibly, and I won't say it. And so it says here they're a business management consultant firm. So remember, this is the parent company of Market Lend who've got this deal, which is a case study on the Polymath website.
Yeah.
Now, if we scroll down, I just clicked on their location.
Yeah.
This photo...
It's like an apartment building.
This photo is their registered business location of the parent company of Market Lend.
Interesting. Okay.
Just thought I'd mention it.
No, that's extremely interesting.
Okay. And so you might have to jump on the YouTube to watch that.
Basically, it looks like someone's house.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes, good. For those of you who aren't viewing it, it's basically what they've done is when you set up your commercial profile on Google, which most companies have to do, you put in your address, because then Google verifies it and they send you a little slip with a code on it. And they've done that, but when they set it up, they will have set it up with their home address, because it was probably when they founded the company.
Yeah.
And my assumption here is not that it's a tiny, crappy company. My assumption here is that they're probably a reasonable asset management company, but they've got no digital presence at all, other than a website that someone else built.
Yeah.
And so they probably don't realize how dodgy that looks on Google.
Yeah.
But it does. So that's all right. And then the other thing is, and we might just pop this up now as I'm talking, which is someone has created basically a comparison of all the different competitors. So this is a comparison of a bunch of different competitors within the space. So you can see here, there's where Polymath sits. So we'll look at some things. So they're located in Canada. The one up on the left here, T0, based in New York. You can see there their total funding is the most out of all of them.
Yeah.
Their team size is almost double Polymath, but the tokenized assets is only 4 compared to 206, and the tokenized volume is nil. So that's kind of interesting. Another interesting one is Bitbond. They're based in Germany, and they've got quite a high tokenized volume. But only 5 assets, tokenized assets.
And all of these guys they're essentially got asset-backed securities through their, that's a genuine use case for crypto, which is cool.
I agree. It doesn't say here. Oh, yeah, and then it shows the blockchain that they use. So Bitbond has created their own called Stellar, don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
You can see Polymath has Polymesh and Ethereum at the moment because they're transitioning. Most of them use Ethereum. There's Polygon there, which is confusing.
Don't look at that one.
And there's a small little San Fran one there, which uses Ethereum, Stellar, Corda, and Hyperledger. Jeez, that's confusing. So there you go.
Yeah, that's cool.
And so what do I think? I think it is a really, really cool project. There's a bunch of funny little red flags. Old mate got accused of whatever.
Yeah.
And like the parent company having their home address listed as on their Google account. But I think, as you're saying, I think it has a pretty cool use case and it could be the future.
Because one of the things that so many old people in finance are basically like, well, it's not based on anything. There's no value because it's not, there's no basis. Yeah. Whereas this is a real basis. For,
And they've got, actual people to come together, create a standard, they're implementing it. So I think it's going to be cool. If you listen to the founder talk, Chris, he says things like, he thinks once there's some adoption, regulators won't only accept this, but they'll mandate this across certain asset classes. And
that's a very big statement.
That's a huge statement. And if that comes true, then it's worth owning a little bit of this. So it is what it is. So you can currently buy Poly if you want to jump in today. You can buy that on any exchange like Binance, for example. And then you will have to go through the process of bridging it across to POLYX at some point. We don't actually know how that works yet because it's not live. By the time this comes out, it probably will be. And then the key here is get POLYX if you want. Get POLYX, so bridge it over, get POLYX, and then stake that, and then you should make some returns. So,
Excellent.
Thank you.
Very good.